Hey Kevin, what's the difference between UX research and user research?
Nothing.
What about experienced researcher and design researcher?
Also nothing.
Okay, what about service design researcher?
They focus on services, but they use the same methods, so nothing.
I also saw Duolingo just changed their team to product.
Same thing, but they're doing it for survival reasons.
What about UX research scientist? Is that different?
Oh, well, that one is a unique title from Meta. Basically human factors, but for people who've never heard of human factors, which every UX person should know anyway.
So I could just apply to them?
Yeah, the titles are kind of meaningless. I mean, honestly, if you look at the job description and if you feel confident that you could do the job, I'd say go for it.
Okay, that makes sense, but why are there so many titles?
Well, you've seen it, I've seen it, we've all seen it. It's the dang wild west of UX titles out here, and a constant need to rebrand our field. We seem to have accepted that our titles are superfluous and meaningless. The field of UX has been going through an identity crisis. On this channel, I talk mostly about research, but this goes for the UX field more broadly. And as the director of UX contemplation for higher education, I want to know why. Why do we have so many dang titles? What's driving these title changes? Why do we keep coming up with new inflated titles? Do the titles reflect an evolving field, or are we actually different from one another? More importantly, are the titles helping us or harming us? I'm afraid that if we keep dividing ourselves today, the core foundation for future UXers will be shaky. And I care about the future generation of UXers. This existential identity crisis goes far beyond titles. It's about survival, our value, our identity, and how we position ourselves in this ever-changing world. My goal isn't to impose a singular title for the field, nor suggest a one-size-fits-all solution. No. In this video, I want to explore how we got here, why all the titles are doing us a disservice, and take us along this journey of identity, of belonging, and ultimately, stop having to try so dang hard to convince people of our value. Let's do it. Achoo! Are we allergic to our titles? Are we allergic to ourselves? In 2017, someone tried to coin a new title, the UX Investigator.
Oh my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
Some classmates in my master's program made the case to take the U out of UX, call it experience research. Others have taken the X out of UX, user research. Some companies prefer design research, some converted to product research. Recently, someone posted on social media asking what title they should use to describe what they do. And they go on to say, oh, I made an internal move within my company. I was previously a technical writer. It changed to the UX designer. And I was told to propose alternative titles. And I saw UX consultant, UX strategist, UX researcher. How do I, basically what encompasses what I do? It's a good question. A friend shared a really, I want to be nice, but it was a dumb article by the UX Design Institute trying to split hairs between what is UX research and what is user research. And guess what? My friend came out even more confused. For a platform trying to teach UX, that article sure did a great job making things confusing. I have a feeling the article was written for SEO and clicks. And when people create inaccurate resources and put it out on the internet, you're hurting people trying to learn. If you're an educator in UX, we have the responsibility to make sure what we teach makes sense. That's why I've dedicated my career trying to undo confusing resources, simplify redundant theories, and, just not have you be confused the way I was confused. That's why I created my masterclass, the most comprehensive course on user research in existence, full stop. There's literally no other course, not even a master's program, that covers what I cover in so much depth. I cover everything you need to know, senior level things, stuff people don't even know that they need to know, and show you how I do things, what I've been doing for the past decade to help you become a badass UX leader. And I don't treat things as advanced or beginner because I feel like if you understand the fundamentals, you are advanced. That's why I emphasize it so much in my masterclass. I poured my blood, sweat, and tears into this thing for the past few years because I truly believe in proper UX pedagogy. Check it out in the description below. Thanks. Anyway, you've probably experienced this confusion in your job search. Or if you're a team manager, had to decide what to call your team. I'm gonna show you. This is the slide I show my students and mentees when they're looking for a UX research job. Holy guacamole! There are over 20 different names for what we do. And Jacob Nielsen calls this UX vocabulary inflation. But have we ever stopped and asked, why isn't there a consensus? Romeo and Juliet said it best. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any name would smell just as sweet. Now, there is beauty in the different contexts where our expertise exists. For example, when I was in the automotive industry, I worked on everything from self-driving cars to the vehicle infotainment systems, the screen that you touch in the car. I used driving simulators. I put eye tracking devices on people to see whether or not people could pay attention to the road and reach for something and touch something, accomplish something on the screen and not crash. So that role required a lot of sensory perception, knowledge of human attention, human factors, biometrics, ergonomics, which was useful in my next role when I worked on Google's hardware products like wearables, smartwatches, and voice assistants. I've also worked in the logistics industry, manufacturing. Like I observed teams in their workspaces. I went to truck driver dispatcher offices and just observed how their teams worked in person. I also went to the mall as a mystery shopper to understand our products and services in the eyes of a customer. I also took week-long trips overseas simply to follow people around doing things and doing ethnographic research. I've done CX research with internal employees. I've had to talk to C-level executives. They were my participants. And I've worked on game engines. I've stepped in as a product manager when my product manager had no idea where to go with strategy, right? They were relying on research to tell them, where do we go? It was the guiding light. I wrote the sales copy for one of Upwork's biggest product launches based on research. Yet, in every role in the past decade, no matter the industry, no matter the product or responsibilities, my title remained UX researcher. But does the title have the ability to represent all that I have done or can do? No, it doesn't. So we experiment with appending descriptors to the front, like if you focus on accessibility, you're an accessibility researcher. If you focus on cars like I did, you're an automotive researcher, right? Or if you want to stay relevant these days, you're an AI researcher. Lots of titles, but cut from the same cloth, so to speak. These days, they get a little bit more confusing. If you want to start telling people your skill set, you're a mixed methods researcher or quantitative UX researcher. Oh, you work with services and not digital products, but still use the same skills and methods? You're a service design researcher and claim that service design researchers are UX researchers, but not the other way around. You have a PhD and you really want people to know that you have a PhD? UX research scientist, and then completely ignore the fact that there's already a title for your job, human factors. Your team isn't taken seriously by your executives? You change it to product researcher and say that product is the most important thing. And if you're really special, then you call yourself a chief empathy evangelist. For a role whose main purpose is aiming for clarity, we don't really do a great job of it ourselves. 20 different titles for the same job, or should I say, job to be done, isn't normal, right? Right? There seems to be very little unity among our community nowadays. 20 titles is a problem, sure, but there's a bigger problem. The real problem is this. If we collectively create divisions based on trivial minutia, and if we aren't sure what to call ourselves, how can we expect others to do the same? Before I got into UX, I read a lot of business books. And here's a selection of them. That's not all of them. I just grabbed what I could for the props for the shot. In fact, one of my favorite business books that I've read is this one, The Voltage Effect by John A. List. Highly recommend it. It's by a behavioral economist who worked at the White House and Uber and Lyft before. Very cool. Highly recommend. And if you have any other book recommendations that you think UX researchers should read in terms of business, leave in the comment below. But that's not the book I'm talking about. I just went on a side quest. When I was reading all these business books, one of those books was Blue Ocean Strategy. This is one of the best-selling business books of all time. In a different video a long time ago, I also recommended this. The authors have a sequel, actually. It's called The Blue Ocean Shift. And it's a more updated version of the book, but essentially almost the same. The tagline of this book is how to create uncontested market space and make the competition irrelevant. Pretty bold tagline, right? The authors detail a 5-step process to creating the titular blue ocean. And I'm gonna show you those 5 steps. I just want you to listen to those 5 steps and see if it reminds you of anything. Step 1, choose the right place to start, build the right team. Step 2, get clear about the current state of affairs. Step 3, find the current pain points in the current red ocean, AKA the current market. Step 4, reconstruct market boundaries and develop alternative opportunities. And step 5, pick the right solutions, conduct rapid user and market research experiments, and launch. There, I just saved you 20 bucks, or go to your local library. Anyway, I just described to you the 5 steps of the Blue Ocean Strategy, one of the best-selling business books of all time. Does it remind you of something? They literally describe the UX process. Business stakeholders aren't dumb. They know research is important, okay? 3 of the 5 steps in the Blue Ocean Strategy involve research. Whether or not they do it correctly, that's a different story. But we've been trying to shove UX down people's throats when they've already been chewing. Kind of graphic. But the business people are using their terms and we're using ours, of which we don't even have a unified name for. No wonder we have such a hard time convincing stakeholders the importance of UX. We keep changing our titles every 2 years because every little specialization warrants a title change, or our leadership isn't taking us seriously, let's change our titles. How can we expect the industry to catch up if we can't even catch up to ourselves? How can we expect our engineers, product managers, our leadership to understand, to care? Isn't this the definition of bad UX? So how do we get here? Let's start from the early 20th century. That was a period where the field of psychology was growing into its own. Early schools of psychology focused on behavior. You know the guys, B.F. Skinner, Pavlov, Watson, right? Animals respond to conditioning. Cognitive psychologists then came around and then said, oh, people aren't just animals responding to rewards and punishment, they have deep thoughts. Not only do we have deep thoughts, we take a more holistic view now with Gestalt psychology. And with more and more hardware technologies and innovation, figures like Lillian Gilbreth, who, shout out, was from my hometown, Oakland, California. There's other people like Donald Broadbent, Alphonse Chapanese, if I'm saying that right. And they studied how humans interacted with these systems, a field called industrial psychology and human factors. Then in the 70s and 80s, this was when we started to see the early signs of UX come about. Usability engineering is now a skilled job title, and behavior economics became a distinct field focused on decision making. Now fast forward to the 90s. Now we have interaction design, information architecture, which brings us to UX design. And then somewhere along the way, UX research branched off into its own specialty. Now at that time, UX research revolved mostly around formative and summative evaluations, in other words, tactical research. But it was very tactical, like GOMS and keystroke level models, tactical. You know, like every single little mouse click, every single movement of the cursor, that tactical. And if you haven't heard of GOMS or KLM, you know, look it up. But I tried to do a little bit of research. I dug as much as I could. 15 years ago, it didn't seem like the title UX researcher existed. So when someone says they've been a UX researcher for 20 years, I'm like, you're probably doing UX research, but your title was not UX researcher. Now, I started off as a UX researcher, but given the winds of change, I reckon in 10 years, maybe that title won't even exist. Which brings us to today, the 2020s. Today, because of the tactical work we can do and do, we have been able to spot broader, more strategic opportunities too, and we're not afraid to speak up about them. The traditional tactical focus of the UX role has now evolved into a blend of strategic and tactical work, which is where I think our superpower is. Now, I gave a talk about how tactical work can lead to strategic initiatives. Check it out in the link in the description below. We're able to dig deep into the details and then get a holistic bird's eye view. We do a whole lot more than our titles can ever describe. But roles do evolve. They do change. The question is, are the fragmented titles of today a result of natural evolution of the field? Are we really that different from one another? Or are the titles a symptom of a deeper identity crisis? But what is an identity crisis? Let's take a look. Erik Erikson, a German developmental psychologist, describes identity as the sense of oneself and how we fit into society. Identity is something that evolves over our entire lifespan based on self-awareness, our social and cultural environments. And I was lucky enough to nerd out on this during my time at the Stanford Lifespan Lab. Now, I'll spare you the psychosocial development lesson, but like a young adult doing some soul searching, we, the UX community, are experimenting with titles, finding our fit in different groups, and struggling to show our value and be accepted. This is what Erik Erikson would call role confusion. There's a conflict between who we want to be versus who we are versus who we can be, all at the same time. And it is completely normal for us to experience this question of identity. We're constantly looking inward and outward to find continuity, like mentors, managers, our peers, leaders, UX or not, new technological developments, the economy, all play a role in shaping who we are. And we attach part of our identity to the titles. But when there are many differences in opinions, conflicting narratives, irrational loud voices attempting to rationalize, it's hard to find that continuity. When we mix these ingredients together and we served ourselves a classic dish of identity crisis. The cornucopia of job titles is just one such symptom of the identity crisis. So, what could have triggered this identity crisis? And I've been thinking about this for a while, and I see three main triggers. The first, layoffs and the current economy. There's no way around it, okay? The second comes from the fear of AI, and that's a huge one. And third, now I haven't been in the field as long as others have, but I've been long enough to know that this has always been a problem. So the third trigger is a deep, long-standing dilemma that UX isn't perceived as critical by leadership. And guess what? All of these triggers have one big underlying theme: survival. It's all about survival. If we're too busy surviving, we stop working on building strong foundations. We start questioning our worth, and then we start employing coping mechanisms. So I'm gonna explain some of these coping behaviors that I've seen over the past decade, being in this field. And I'm not trying to be UX's therapist, but it's important to understand the underlying factors and how this is affecting our roles. So let's talk about some of these coping behaviors that I've seen. The first coping behavior I notice is reacting with doom and gloom narratives that UX is dying. If you believe UX is dying, which is not, you won't want to associate yourself with it, thus leading to another reactive behavior, rebranding, right? And then you rebrand to any of the other titles I mentioned in this video in order to start distancing yourself from the field, hoping to fool people that you're something completely different. This is new. We're not UX people, we're something different. And then a third behavior is it's speculating. It's just, people do this all the time and it's normal, right? But you speculate the future, which is literally what we tell each other not to do. Some pundits say the future of UX is generalist. Others say the future of UX is specialist. Everybody out here trying to predict the future, but it's clear we have no idea. It's the fourth behavior is just sometimes you get beaten down so much, you just start conforming to what your business units want because you just want to survive, right? I spoke to a VP at one of these companies and they really seem tired, like beaten down, like almost like they've given up and they're just existing to keep their jobs. It's sad. And then the final behavior, fifth behavior I've seen, it's also kind of sad. You decide to leave UX behind altogether and you blame it on AI, you blame it on boot camps, you blame it on democratization or whatever have you. On this channel, I try to be positive. I try to make UX learning fun. So it makes me uneasy to speak negatively, but I'm tired of having to reassure people that the field isn't dying because someone writes a reactive clickbait article. I'm tired of seeing people speculating UX like it's the stock market, right? People hype it up when times are good, and when times are bad, they panic sell, right? Just hodl. And lastly, I'm tired of the blame game. And I'm sure you are too. Man, I get it, right? So we're talking about coping behaviors. And if I get a flat tire while driving, I'm gonna use the spare tire as a temporary fix. Yeah, see? Right there. Fat nail. Luckily, I don't think it's in anywhere too precarious, but that's kind of like the state of UX right now, right? The coping mechanisms are all temporary fixes, but everybody seems to have their own belief on how to mount a spare tire. What I do know is that we've been driving on spare tires for long enough. All the coping behaviors divide us as a community. They distract us from finding a solid footing for ourselves. We out here debating titles, the future. Meanwhile, our stakeholders, the businesses, the organizations, they're moving forward. They ain't got time to listen to us kerfuffle with each other. That's why I and us badass UX leaders focus on actually doing something about it, making this feel better, more cohesive, more rooted in fundamentals, rather than concern ourselves with the branding. So how do we reconcile this identity crisis? I don't know, I'm just some random guy. But we can start by coming together as a community and build our field back up. I don't have the answer to this existential problem, but I would like to offer a more affiliative approach to our collective futures. We've been doing UX forever, before it was even called UX. Dissect all the titles that exist into their core components, and you can clearly see what we're really about. Research, being nerds, understanding people, how we act, how we think, how we feel, and not just talking about empathy, but actually practicing it, right? Compassion, putting it all together in order to strategize innovations and make strong decisions and just do cool stuff. That's why I loved UX, that's why I got in. That's what we do. The only difference is context. We all use the same friggin' methods, just in different contexts. The field continues to experience growing pains because we keep focusing on growing our tree branches rather than the strong, solid root. If we did that, we wouldn't have to keep fighting for what we do. Remember, our business folks literally describe the UX process, but in their terms. People in the business world already know this. Whether or not they put it into practice, that's another story. But we have made it infinitely more confusing than it needs to be. Now, the focus on the user's experience should be a core business principle, not a specialization meant for just one team. My original goals for this video were to, 1, dissect the symptoms of the identity crisis in order to, 2, establish a better sense of self and connection as a community, and 3, share some tips on how to move forward together and how I've personally been able to convince teams of the value of UX. And I think I've done the first 2 as best as I can. Now let me leave you with 3 takeaways. First, if you're unsure whether your audience understands or even values UX, stop pitching UX. Stop it. Stop pitching CX, stop pitching design thinking, product, whatever. Stop talking. Stop talking to talk, right? No more UX theater. Walk the walk. Show value, don't tell. Show, don't tell, right? So many people, like, they make templates for calculating UX's ROI, the cost, blah, blah, blah. And I did this for one of my teams once. I had the numbers, the ROI, estimated costs, time savings. No one cares. Nobody cares. So I said, fudge it. I'm not gonna use the letters UX at all. Not in my title, not in my work, not in my presentations. I just did what we do best, which is ask questions, break assumptions, spot problems, and also solve problems in a customer-centric way so that your teams can make the best decisions for the business and the users. And at the end of the project, they love the work so much. They're like, wow, we want to continue working with you. And I'm like, ta-da! That was UX, the grand reveal, right? I didn't start out with pitching UX. I just did the thing and then told them, well, that was UX. That was UX research. I mean, whatever. That's my first takeaway for you. Stop talking about it and just do it. Second takeaway, I acknowledge different titles exist for a reason. And titles evolve for specialization reasons. So it's fine, do it. Adapt to suit your business needs, whatever works to ensure your team's success. Because if you gotta survive, you gotta survive. Build on strengths, build on weaknesses, hire the right people to fill in those gaps. But in your efforts to specialize, don't forget the community, don't exclude the community that paved the paths for us. I'm talking about you, UX research scientists. Just kidding. At some point, we gotta recognize when all these silly redundant titles are doing more harm than good to the overall field. They're just redundant at that point. And the third takeaway, finally, I would like us to look at the bigger picture. We have fragmented titles and a fragmented sense of identity because we're unsure about the future. And that's normal. When we're unsure about what's gonna happen in the future, we try to adapt and we try to react. And when we react, we're not really thinking about it because we gotta survive. That's all well and good, but just remind yourself, at the end of the day, our role, what we do as a community, isn't all that different. We may have different titles, but at the end of the day, our core principles are aligned. We're all one and the same. We aren't just doing UX, we're doing good. We're serving people, we're doing the right things right. Whether it's software, hardware, services, or anything else, we practice empathy in a world that desperately needs it. If you made it this far, thank you. That means a lot because I spent like close to a year noodling on this topic. I've been in the field for about 10 years. And in the 10 years, I've seen so many titles that pop up, all these reactive behaviors. And I want us to move forward together, not separately, okay? So, what do you think best describes what we do? I'm sure you might have some thoughts and I'd love to hear them. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. Did Kevin go off the rails here? Did I spend too much time in isolation? What have you experienced? I just want to see the community connected again. Not because of uncertainty, but in spite of it. I post videos on all things UX research to help you become a badass UX leader. Thanks for watching. Mad love. Peace.